Good morning, guys. Today I want to introduce you to an old friend, someone we haven't seen for 8 months. Back in September, we talked about the Sphinx Moth caterpillar. This was a caterpillar that was in my garden eating my tomato plants, and we looked at how it was getting set up for going through metamorphosis. Check out this video from September 24th, Async 924 Sphinx Moths. Great video about what we were expecting, what life cycle they go through, and here we are 8 months later, and our Sphinx Moth is starting to emerge. He's almost done with his metamorphosis. So near the end of his life cycle as a caterpillar, I put him into this container. I put in some leaves so that he was able to eat, and a jar of soil so that when he was ready, he could bury himself down in the dirt and turn himself into a chrysalis. Chrysalis is the protective outer covering that surrounds the pupa, which is his larval state where he's just not quite a caterpillar anymore. He's dissolved his body down into a goo that will reform into a moth. Now, I've checked on him a few times over the last few months, always wondering about him, worrying, is he done? Is he dead? Is it too cold? Is he hungry? Is it too dry? I put a little damp cloth in here, make sure that it didn't get too dried out, although his chrysalis should be sealed enough that it wouldn't be a problem. He's not going to be eating during that time. He's just going to be surviving, living off of whatever fat he stored inside his chrysalis with him. And he's also not going to be using a lot of energy, so a lot of that fat would not be used. It would just be just enough to keep the body alive. I knew he was alive because every time I pulled him out, he would wiggle. So now, take a look at what he's doing right now. So here you go. Here you can see him. You can see some of the color of his wings. You see his antenna folded back. You can see his little tiny legs. You can tell which end is the head and which end is the body. And he's going to be like this for a while, maybe a couple more days, because as he is shedding this shell, this chrysalis, he's also drying out. After he gets partway done with it, he can stretch his legs and stretch his wings and let them dry out. Over here, you can see his chrysalis shell that he wiggled off. This is the shell that he was wrapped up in, but he's still got a little bit of it still up at the top there. So one question you probably have is, why did it take so long? I thought a butterfly was supposed to come out of its shell after a few weeks. Well, this is what happens. When winter comes, animals are very vulnerable, especially insects. Some organisms can extend their life cycles to adjust to certain conditions. Once he was in his chrysalis, he was able to sit there and wait until the conditions were just right, making sure it was warm enough and there would be plenty of food to eat when he emerged. The monarch butterfly is another good example of this. Most of the time they live about 2 to 6 weeks long, but when they're the last hatch of the season, they can live for up to 9 months as butterflies. This is because of their migration pattern. They start out in Mexico and they travel north, and they're traveling up to the northern United States. As they travel, they live for a couple of weeks, then they land, they lay their eggs on a milkweed plant, and they go through the life cycle and then they die. And the next batch of eggs hatches and they fly north for a bit, and then they land and they lay their eggs on a milkweed plant, and then they die. And they do that for 3 or 4 times until they're up into the northern reaches of the United States, up near Canada. And then they fly back and they do the same cycle, landing on milkweed plants and laying their eggs. And when they get back to Mexico, at that point it's winter. Now they've moved to Mexico because it's warmer and they want to overwinter in Mexico. And they stop eating, the butterflies stop eating, they start living off of their fat, they slow down their activity, and they wait until spring. In fact, their body doesn't even mature enough to be able to reproduce until spring comes. So those butterflies that have returned to Mexico for winter are going to live not 2 to 6 weeks, but 9 months long, waiting for the warmer weather and waiting for the time to be right to travel north again. Life is amazing. Have a great day, guys.